If you spent any amount of time on movie YouTube, you've probably seen plenty of those videos about accents in movies. In fact, videos about accents in movies, especially the worst accents in movies, are easily some of the most popular videos on movie YouTube. And I hate them all. People love taking apart bad accents in movies, and I get it. I totally get it. Sometimes accents in movies can be really, really bad.
I know where the bastard sleeps. I brought him there. To Carfax Abbey.
Or at least to the point where you're not even sure what the actor's really going for.
Spend my life in hiding. The sheriff calls us outlaws. But I say we are free. And one free man defending his home is more powerful than 10 hired soldiers.
Or maybe, I don't know, they're just crazy?
When did you get in? 1/2 hour ago. I find the water on the stove and the dinner cooking, and I say, Johnny, you're in luck, mon vieux. Your friend Albert is suspect you. What do you think of my whiskey? She's dandy, huh?
Either way, when you talk about accents in movies, and the characters in the movie are characters in a situation that exists in either the 20th century or the 21st century, as far as I'm concerned, you get a pass. Now, let me make this explicitly clear before we get too deep into this. This is not one of those videos on the best or the worst accents out there. This video is about how much I hate those videos and how much I don't care about what the accent is doing, especially if it's 20th century or 21st century. If it's before that, okay, we can talk. But really, 20th century on, I'm not that concerned. Here's why. In the early 20th century, two inventions really began to ramp up in popularity. One was from the 19th century, and the other was right at the start of the 20th century. Telephone and radio. Both of them really took off at the first part of the 20th century, and people could suddenly hear voices from somewhere other than their own town or village, whether they were speaking directly to the person on a telephone or listening on a radio. Almost 3 decades later into the 20th century, movies got sound. And now people could go to the movies and hear conversations between actors on the screen that didn't sound anything like the people they knew in their hometown. Unless perhaps the movie was made in their hometown. Then I guess it's a possibility. But the point is, by the mid-20th century, with the growing popularity of television, the absolute already amazing popularity of movies and radio, people all over the world could now hear other people all over the world. And so accents themselves started to become a little more nebulous than they had been before. By the time we get to the latter half of the 20th century, accents are already starting to blend and fade and change because of this effect. For instance, I was born and raised in the same place until I was around 30 years old. So it's not like I was born in this place and then at the age of 2 my parents moved. No. I was born there and went to school there and was raised there and got jobs there and got my first apartments there. And I was there until I was 30 or so years old. And yet, when people ask where I'm from, they never ever guess that that's where I'm from. Although now, if they watch this video, and certainly you watching this video will know, that I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. And the reason I don't sound like I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, is because I spent most of my time watching TV and movies and listening to the radio and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube on the internet and doing all of the things that allowed me to hear other people as much or more so than the people I was actually going to school with or living with. In fact, I'd like to back up for a second here and correct myself. I do sound like I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. Because I am from Charleston, South Carolina, and therefore, this is how you sound when you're from Charleston, South Carolina. You also sound like this. Some people sound like this. And if you go to a video showing Fritz Hollings, some people sound like that. People sound all kind of different ways when they're from Charleston, South Carolina. Just like people sound all kinds of different ways if they're from Sacramento, California, or Albany, New York, or Dallas, Texas. They didn't in the 1800s and before, but 20th century and after, yeah, the accents are everywhere now. And that's why if the movie accent is with a character in a situation that takes place in the 20th century or after, I really don't care how accurate that accent is. It really has no impact on how I'm going to enjoy the movie unless the actor themselves are doing it so badly that it's coming off as a bad performance.
But this is just a little bit bigger than you and me. And by the way, I didn't say million. I said billion.
Then, yeah, it's a problem. But outside of that, it's really not. And honestly, if the accent is in a situation that is occurring so long ago, like 15 or 14 or 1300s, then I'd rather they just not do accents at all. Like, for instance, The Last Duel. I thought they made the absolute right decision in not using any accents in that movie. Why would you? It was centuries ago. You're speaking the movie in English, just use whatever accents the actors have. In fact, the movies have done that for decades. No one used to care when you'd watch a movie about an ad man living in New York City and he sounded like Cary Grant for some reason. No one cared that Katharine Hepburn and William Powell didn't quite sound like they were from anywhere except maybe some elite college. We didn't used to be so obsessed with whether accents were accurate or not in a movie. I mean, look at this.
A sure thing. I stay till the boat come. And wait till you see my skins. I had the best year I never had. And now I'm going to get so busy doing nothing. Yes, sir, I'm going to do nothing like she's never been done before.
I don't know what he's doing. I don't know. Who cares? It's Olivier. He's having fun. Let him do it. But beyond that, accent experts are often wrong. You know those videos of, like, accent expert deconstructs 10 of the worst accents in movies? I've watched those before, and they always kind of annoy me because I think you're actually wrong. Like, I watched this one where they were talking about how Kevin Spacey's accent in House of Cards wasn't really accurate for Gaffney, South Carolina, a place, by the way, I visited several times. And you know what? I'm from South Carolina. His accent was fine. His accent sounded exactly like so many accents I have heard in South Carolina. And because I sound like I do, if I were in House of Cards, that very same accent expert would be talking about how I wasn't getting the accent right. Which I would be because this is my accent. And I am from the South. In fact, accent experts are focused so much on the very specifics of how certain words are spoken and vowels are prolonged that they kind of miss the big picture of fading and blending accents that we've gotten in the 20th and 21st centuries. If you want a good example of this, watch the documentary Finding Vivian Maier. Now, I'd recommend watching the documentary anyway because I think it's a terrific one and I think it's a fascinating subject. But in it, there's a discussion of Vivian Maier's accent because it was unknown for a long time, in fact, until the documentary was made, where exactly she was from. What's interesting is that the non-accent experts all pretty much get it right. The accent expert gets it wrong. They all say, sounds like she was from France, but it kind of faded because, she spent a lot of time in the United States of America, so it faded. The accent expert says, nope, she's doing a fake French accent. And, well, Here, just watch this.
She was French. She had lost most of her accent, I would say.
She affected what at the time struck me instantly as a fake French accent.
If some people have said she had a fake accent, no, this is not true.
My degree is in linguistics. I have a PhD in linguistics. The truth is, it was a fake accent. Her vowels were longer in duration than French vowels. I mean, you know, my master's thesis was on vowel duration in French, so I had a little bit of background in it.
I believe it's someone who had polished their English accent, having then lost some of their French accent.
And it turns out she spent a lot of time in her mom's village in France. This one.
Quand on parle avec les gens qui ont un souvenir d'elle, et ils en ont parce qu'elle était complètement différente.
So the accent expert, who thought she was doing a fake French accent, was wrong. And Vivian Maier was a product of the 20th century. She traveled around the world. She spent her adolescence and formative years in France. She spent her adult years in the United States. The accents blended. She's a perfect example of why you can't really pinpoint with too much accuracy someone's accent in the 21st century. But that's all about technology. What about context? Context is really important here too. Really important. Okay, here's what I'm actually just trying to say. Lay off Dick Van Dyke. I can't tell you how many lists of bad accents in movies have Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins on them. It was a children's movie. He was playing it big because he was playing in a children's movie. Why are we talking about his accent like he was on the stage at the Old Vic actually attempting to do King Lear? Guys, it's Bert the Chimney Sweep. He's playing it like he should be playing it, to the back row, because it's a movie for kids. In other words, he did a good job. Playing the accent that mangled and that big is exactly what he should have been doing. You know, Jack Haley once said that the way he read his lines in The Wizard of Oz was the way he read stories to his daughter. See, he was playing in a children's movie, so he knew to read the lines like he was talking to a child. But seriously, it's been like over 60 years now. Give the guy a break. He did a fine job. Please stop including him on bad accent lists. Thank you. In fact, some of the worst accents the movies have ever produced have been among my favorite. That clip I showed earlier of Laurence Olivier, I love that accent. I don't know what he's doing. I know he's trying to be a French-Canadian trapper. It's the 49th parallel, by the way. I don't think he's nailing it, but I love it. It's got the right energy. It's got the right feel. It's got the right sound. See, I don't mind that. Like Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that's bad because he just doesn't even seem to be trying. Like, if Kevin Costner had played that to the back row and really overdid it, then I'd be fine with it. But his is bad in the way that Keanu Reeves is in Dracula, where it's just kind of half-assed and they're not really putting much of an effort into it. I'll forgive anything with a bad accent if you play it big. Just play it big. Big forgives a lot. There's a lot to be forgiven when you play it big. So like I said, this video isn't going to be about the worst or the best accents in movies. I couldn't care less if Meryl Streep is getting her accents perfectly right. I don't care. I'm honestly not that big a fan of her accents in movies, not because they're not good, but because they are purportedly so well researched and done. And God, I don't care. Give me Dick Van Dyke and Laurence Olivier playing it to the next theater in the next town any day of the week over someone spending like 3 years researching the proper inflections for every line they speak. Yeah, no thanks. That's really all I've got for this time. Drive safely.